The place on the East Coast I want you to think about is Seaburg. It isn't very different now from what I remember of it as a child. To the south, there are marshes cut through with dikes, much like the early scenes in Great Expectations. To the north stretch flat fields that fade into heath. Further inland there is heath, fir woods, and, above all, gorse. There is a long seafront and a main street, and behind that stands a large flint church with a broad, solid western tower and a ring of 6 bells. I remember very clearly the sound of those bells on a hot Sunday in August as our group slowly made its way up the white, dusty slope toward them, for the church stands at the top of a short but steep hill. On hot days, the bells had a flat, clattering sound, but when the air was softer, they became more mellow. The railway ran down to its small terminus further along the same road. Just before you reached the station, there was a bright white windmill, and another down near the shingle at the south end of the town, and others on higher ground to the north. There were cottages of bright red brick with slate roofs, but why go on with such ordinary details? The truth is, they crowd into my mind as soon as I begin to write about Seaburg. I would like to be sure I've chosen the right ones. Still, I haven't quite finished describing it yet. Walk away from the sea and the town, past the station, and turn up the road on the right. It is a sandy road running parallel with the railway, and if you follow it, it climbs to slightly higher ground. On your left, you are now heading north, is heath. On your right, toward the sea, is a belt of old fir trees bent by the wind, thick at the top, sloping in the way seaside trees do. Seen from a distance, they would immediately tell you, even if you didn't already know, that you were approaching a windy coast. At the top of this rise, a line of these fir trees branches off and runs toward the sea, following a ridge. The ridge ends in a clearly defined mound overlooking flat fields of rough grass, and a small group of fir trees crowns it. Here you might sit on a warm spring day, perfectly content, looking out over the blue sea, the white windmills, the red cottages, the bright green grass, the church tower, and the distant Martello Tower to the south. As I've said, I first knew Seaburg as a child, but many years passed before I came to know it again later in life. Still, it has always held a place in my affections, and any story connected with it interests me. One such story came to me quite by chance from a man whom I had once been able to help, enough, in his opinion, to justify him confiding in me. He said, "I know that part of the country fairly well. I used to go to Seaburg regularly for golf in the spring. I usually stayed at the Bear with a friend, Henry Long. You might have known him." "Slightly," I said. "We used to take a sitting room and were very comfortable there. Since he died, I haven't cared to go back, and I don't think I would anyway after what happened on our last visit. It was in April 19 that we were there, and by chance we were almost the only guests in the hotel. The public rooms were practically empty, so we were rather surprised when, after dinner, our sitting room door opened and a young man put his head in. We had noticed him before. He was rather pale and nervous-looking, light hair, light eyes, but not unpleasant. It couldn't have been more than a little bit before 10 when he came in. "I beg your pardon," he said, "is this a private room?" We could have said yes and turned him away, but instead one of us said, "Please come in." "Oh, may I?" he said, clearly relieved. It was obvious he wanted company, and since he seemed a sensible sort, not the kind to overwhelm you with his life story, we told him to make himself at home. "I suppose you find the other rooms rather bleak," I said. Yes, he did, but it was very kind of us, and so on. Once that was settled, he tried to read a book. Long was playing patience, and I was writing. After a few minutes, it became clear to me that our visitor was extremely nervous, and it began to affect me as well. So I put away my writing and tried to draw him into conversation.
After a few remarks, which I don't recall, he became rather confidential. "You'll think it very odd of me," he said, "but the truth is I've had something of a shock." I suggested a drink, and we had one. When the waiter came in, the young man started noticeably and seemed very uneasy until the door was shut again. After a while, he returned to what he had been saying. He told us there was no one he knew in the place, but he did happen to know who we were through a mutual acquaintance, and he wanted a bit of advice if we didn't mind. Of course, we said we didn't mind at all, and Long put away his cards. We settled down to listen. "It began," he said, "more than a week ago when I bicycled over to Froston, about 6 or 7 miles away, to see the church. I'm very interested in architecture, and it has a lovely porch with niches and shields. I took a photograph of it, and then an old man who was working in the churchyard came up and asked if I'd like to see inside. I said yes, and he let me in. There wasn't much to see, but I told him it was a nice little church and very well kept. But, I said, the porch is the best part. We were just outside it then, and he said, "Ah, yes, that's a fine porch, and do you know the meaning of that coat of arms there?" It had 3 crowns on it, and though I don't know much about heraldry, I said I believed they were the old arms of East Anglia. "That's right," he said, "but do you know what those 3 crowns mean?" I said I was sure there was an explanation, but I didn't know it. "Well then," he said, "for all your learning, I can tell you something you don't know. Those are the 3 holy crowns that were buried near the coast to keep enemies from landing. You don't believe me, I can see that, but I tell you, if one of those crowns wasn't still there, the Germans would have landed here again and again and killed everyone in their beds. That's the truth. If you don't believe me, ask the rector. There he is, coming now."
I turned and saw the rector coming up the path, a pleasant-looking, elderly man. Before I could calm the old fellow, who was getting quite worked up, the rector spoke. "What's all this about, John? Good day to you, sir. Have you been looking at our little church?" That led to a short conversation, which gave the old man time to settle down. Then the rector asked him again what the matter was. "Oh, it was nothing," he said. "Only I was telling this gentleman he ought to ask you about those holy crowns." "Ah, yes, of course," said the rector. "That is a very curious matter, though I don't know whether the gentleman is interested in our local stories." "Oh, he'll be interested fast enough," said the old man. "He'll trust what you tell him, sir. You knew William Ager yourself, father and son too." At that point, I said I would very much like to hear about it, and before long I found myself walking up the village street with the rector. He stopped now and then to speak to parishioners, and then took me back to the rectory and into his study. He had already gathered that I wasn't just an ordinary tourist, and that I might take a genuine interest in local traditions, so he was quite willing to talk. In fact, I'm surprised that the story he told me hasn't been written down somewhere before. This was his account. There has long been a belief in these parts about 3 holy crowns. The old people say they were buried in different places along the coast to keep invaders away, Danes, French, Germans, whoever it might be. According to the stories, one of the crowns was dug up long ago. Another has been lost to the sea through erosion, and one still remains, continuing its work of protection. Now, if you've read the usual histories of this county, you may remember that in 1687 a crown, believed to be that of Redwald, king of the East Angles, was discovered at Rendlesham. Unfortunately, it was melted down before it was properly described or recorded. Rendlesham isn't on the coast, but it's not far inland, and it lies along an important route of access. I believe that is the crown people refer to when they say one has been found. Then to the south, you probably know of the site of a Saxon royal palace that is now under the sea. That, I think, is where the second crown was. And somewhere north of those 2, they say, lies the third. "Do they say exactly where it is?" I asked.
"Oh yes," he said, "they certainly do, but they don't tell." His manner made it clear that pressing the point wouldn't get me anywhere, so I changed the subject. What did the old man mean when he said you knew William Agar, as if that were connected with the crowns? "Ah, yes," said the rector, "that's another curious story. The Agars are a very old family in this area, though not people of rank or large property. Still, they've long claimed that their branch of the family were the guardians of the last crown. I remember an old Nathaniel Agar when I was young. He lived nearby. During the War of 1870, he spent the entire time camping near the supposed site. His son William did the same during the South African War, and young William, his son, who died quite recently, took lodgings in the cottage nearest the place. It affected his death, I'm afraid. He was consumptive, and the exposure and night watching did him no good. It was a terrible grief to him that he was the last of his line. He could do nothing about it. The nearest relatives were in the colonies. I even wrote letters for him, urging them to come over on family business of great importance, but there was no reply. So now, if the crown is still there, it has no guardian. That was what the rector told me. You can imagine how fascinating I found it. The only thing I could think about afterwards was how to discover the exact spot where the crown was supposed to lie. I wish I had left it alone. But it seemed as though fate was pushing me on. As I cycled back past the churchyard wall, my eye was caught by a fairly new gravestone. It bore the name William Agar. Naturally, I stopped and read it. It said, "Of this parish, died at Seaborough, 19, aged 28. There it was, you see. With a little careful questioning, I ought to be able to find the cottage nearest the spot. The only problem was where to begin asking. Again, fate intervened. I wandered into a curiosity shop, you know the kind, and began looking through some old books. And there, of all things, I found a prayer book from around 1740 in a handsome binding. I'll show it to you. It's in my room." He left us rather surprised, but was back almost at once, slightly out of breath, holding the book open to the flyleaf. Written there in a rough hand was this: "Nathaniel Agar is my name, and England is my nation. Seaborough is my dwelling place, and Christ is my salvation. When I am dead and in my grave, and all my bones are rotten, I hope the Lord will think on me when I am quite forgotten." It was dated 1754, and there were many other entries, Agars of various names, Nathaniel, Frederick, William, and so on, ending with William, 19. "You see," he said, "anyone would call it extraordinary luck. I certainly did, but I don't now." Of course, he had asked the shopkeeper about William Agar, and learned that he had lodged in a cottage in the North Field and died there. That was enough to guide him. There was only one cottage of any size in that area. The next step was to make some sort of acquaintance with the people living there. He managed it by provoking a dog to attacking him, which caused the owners to come out and apologize. That led to conversation. He mentioned Agar's name, pretending he might have known him. The woman spoke of how sad it was that he had died so young, and she was sure it was because he spent nights outdoors in the cold. Did he go out to sea at night? "Oh no," she said, "it was on the hill over there with the trees on it." And with that, he had found the place.
"I knew a little about excavating these kinds of burial mounds," he went on. "I've opened several in the Downs before, but always with permission, in daylight, and with help. This was very different. I had to be extremely careful before putting a spade into the ground. I couldn't simply cut a trench across the mound, and with those old fir trees growing there, I knew the roots would make things difficult. Still, the soil was light and sandy, which made it easier to work with, and there were a few rabbit holes that could be widened into something like a tunnel.
The real difficulty was coming and going at odd hours without attracting attention at the hotel. Once I had decided how to go about it, I told the people at the cottage that I had to go away for a night. Instead, I spent it out there on the mound. I made my tunnel. I won't go into all the details of how I supported it or filled it in afterwards, but the main point is that I found the crown. At this, both Long and I couldn't help exclaiming in surprise. I myself had long known about the crown found at Rendlesham and often regretted its loss. No one had ever properly seen an Anglo-Saxon crown, at least not in modern times. But the young man, Paxton, as we now knew him, looked at us with a troubled expression. "Yes," he said, "and the worst of it is, I don't know how to put it back." "Put it back?" we both said. "My dear fellow, you've made one of the most extraordinary discoveries imaginable. It ought to go straight to the authorities, to the tower, to a museum, somewhere it can be properly examined. What's the difficulty? If you're worried about ownership or legal matters, that can all be sorted out." But he only covered his face with his hands and muttered again, "I don't know how to put it back." At last, Long said gently, "Forgive me if this sounds rude, but are you quite sure you've actually found it?" I had been thinking much the same thing myself. The story did sound, when considered calmly, rather like the fantasy of a disturbed mind. But Paxton took no offense. He sat up and said in a flat, hopeless tone, "Oh yes, there's no doubt about that. I have it here, in my room, locked in my bag. You can come and look at it if you like. I won't bring it here." We certainly weren't going to miss the opportunity. We went with him at once. His room was only a few doors away. There was a servant in the passage, collecting shoes, or so we thought. Later, we weren't so sure. Paxton seemed even more agitated than before. He hurried into his room, beckoned us inside, switched on the light, and carefully shut the door. Then he unlocked his bag and took out a bundle wrapped in clean handkerchiefs. He laid it on the bed and slowly unwrapped it. I can now say that I have seen a genuine Anglo-Saxon crown. It was made of silver, just as the Rendlesham crown was said to have been. It was set with various stones, mostly antique intaglios and cameos, and was rather plain, even rough in workmanship. In fact, it closely resembled the crowns seen in early manuscripts and coins. I saw no reason to think it dated any later than the 9th century. I was intensely interested and wanted to handle it, but Paxton stopped me. "Don't touch it," he said. "I'll hold it." And with a sigh, one that I can only describe as dreadful, he picked it up and turned it so we could see it from every angle. "Have you seen enough?" he asked at last. We nodded. He wrapped it up again, locked it away, and stood looking at us in silence. "Come back to our room," Long said, "and tell us exactly what the trouble is." He thanked us and said, "Will you go first and see if the way is clear?" That seemed odd, as there was nothing particularly suspicious about our movements, and the hotel was nearly empty. But we were beginning to feel uneasy ourselves. Nerves can spread quickly. So we opened the door cautiously, peered out, and both had the same strange impression that something, more than just a shadow, moved away from the doorway without making a sound. "It's all right," we whispered to Paxton. We went back to our sitting room with him between us. I had been about to express my excitement over what we had seen, but one look at Paxton's face made it clear that such enthusiasm would be entirely out of place. So we let him speak first. "What is to be done?" he said. Long pretended not to understand at first. Why not find out who owns the land and inform them? "Oh, no, E. Paxton interrupted. "Forgive me, you've been very kind, but don't you see? It has to go back, and I daren't be there at night, and it's impossible in the daytime. Perhaps you don't understand. Well then, the truth is, I haven't been alone since I touched it." I was about to make some foolish remark, but Long caught my eye and I stopped. He said quietly, "I think I understand, or at least partly, but it might help if you could explain a little clearly." Paxton looked over his shoulder, then leaned closer and spoke in a low voice. We listened carefully, and later compared notes, so I can repeat his account almost word for word. "It began while I was first searching the mound. It kept putting me off. There was always someone there, a man standing by one of the fir trees. This was in daylight, you understand. I never saw him directly. He was always just at the edge of my vision, on the left or the right, and when I looked straight at him, he was gone. I would lie down and watch carefully, making sure no one was there, but as soon as I got up and started again, there he was. And then he began to interfere with things. Wherever I left that prayer book, unless I locked it away, when I came back to my room, it would be out on the table, open to the page with the names, and one of my razors laid across it to keep it open. I'm sure he can't open my bag, or something worse would have happened. You see, he's not strong, but I still daren't face him. While I was digging, it got worse. If I hadn't been so determined, I would have given up and run away. It felt like someone scraping behind me all the time. At first, I thought it was just loose soil falling, but as I got closer to the crown, it was unmistakable. And when I finally uncovered it, when I put my fingers into it and pulled it free, there came a cry behind me. He stopped for a moment, then went on more quietly. I can't describe it. It was utterly desolate and full of threat at the same time. It ruined everything. All the excitement of finding it vanished in that instant. If I had any sense, I would have put it back then and there, but I didn't. The rest of the night was terrible. I had hours before I could safely return to the hotel. I filled in the tunnel, covered my tracks, and all the while he was there, trying to stop me. Sometimes you see him, sometimes you don't. He's always there, but he can control whether you see him or not. I left just before sunrise and made my way back, but even in daylight it wasn't much better. There were hedges, bushes, fences, places he could hide. I was never at ease for a moment. And when I met people on the road, they looked not at me, but behind me. The same at the station. The guard even held the carriage door open after I got in, as if someone else were about to follow. You may think I imagined it, but I didn't. He gave a hollow sort of laugh. And even if I do manage to put it back, he won't forgive me. I know it. And 2 weeks ago, I was perfectly happy. At that, he dropped into a chair and covered his face.
We didn't know what to say at first, but it was clear we had to try to help him somehow. In the end, it seemed there was only one thing we could do. If he was determined to return the crown, then we would go with him. After what we had heard, it even seemed the sensible course. If such dreadful consequences had followed his taking it, perhaps there really was something in the old belief that the crown had some kind of power connected to the protection of the coast. At least that was how it felt to me, and I believe Long thought the same. Our offer relieved Paxton greatly. The question now was, when should we do it? It was already about 10:30. Could we manage a late walk without raising suspicion? We looked out of the window. A brilliant full moon lit the sky, the Paschal moon. Long said he would deal with the boots. He would explain that we might be out a little late, and if we stayed longer than expected, we would make it worth his while. We were regular guests at the hotel, caused little trouble, and were considered generous enough with tips. The Boots was easily persuaded. He agreed to let us out onto the seafront, and, as we later learned, stayed watching after us as we left. Paxton carried a large coat over his arm, concealing the wrapped crown beneath it. So we set out on this strange errand with surprising haste, almost before we had time to think about how unusual and unsettling it really was. "The shortest way is up the hill and through the churchyard," Paxton said as we paused briefly outside the hotel. The town was completely quiet, not a soul in sight. "We can't go by the dike near the cottage," Paxton added as I suggested another route. "There's the dog." That was reason enough. We went up the road to the church and entered through the churchyard gate. I admit I felt uneasy passing among the graves. It crossed my mind that those lying there might somehow be aware of what we were doing, but if they were, it seemed they also knew that something else, something on their side perhaps, was already watching us. We saw no sign of anything, yet the feeling of being observed was stronger than anything I had ever experienced. It grew worse when we left the churchyard and entered a narrow path bordered by high hedges. We hurried through it quickly, as if driven, and emerged into open fields. Even there, I would have preferred open ground to the hedgerows we followed. At least in the open, one might see if something was behind. As it was, we crossed gates, turned left, and eventually climbed onto the ridge that led to the mound. As we approached it, both Long and I had the same impression that there were dim, unseen presences waiting for us, and beyond them, something more real, something that had followed us all along. Paxton's condition was alarming. He breathed heavily, like someone being hunted, and neither of us dared to look closely at his face. We hadn't really considered how he would manage the task when we reached the mound, but as it turned out, that was the least difficult part. The moment we reached it, he threw himself at one spot on the side of the mound and began digging frantically with his hands. Within minutes, most of his body had disappeared into the hole. We stood holding his coat and the bundle of handkerchiefs, glancing nervously around us. There was nothing to be seen. Behind us, the dark line of fir trees stood against the sky. To the right, half a mile away, we could see the church tower. To the left, cottages and a windmill on the horizon. Ahead, the calm sea, with the faint sound of a dog barking somewhere near a cottage by the dike. The brilliant moonlight cast its bright path across the water. The wind whispered through the trees above us, and the sea murmured below. Everything seemed still, and yet there was a sharp, almost bitter awareness of something hostile very close by. It felt like a dog straining at a leash, ready to be released at any moment. Paxton suddenly pulled himself out of the hole and stretched out a hand. "Give it to me," he whispered, unwrapped. We removed the handkerchiefs and handed him the crown. The moonlight caught it as he snatched it from us. Neither Long nor I had touched it, and afterwards I was glad of that. In another moment, he had thrust it back into the hole and was already filling it in, working furiously with his bare hands, which were soon bleeding. He refused any help. It took much longer to restore the ground so it looked undisturbed, but somehow he managed it remarkably well. At last, he stood up. We turned and began to walk back. We had gone perhaps 200 yards when Long suddenly said, "I say, you've left your coat behind. That won't do. Look!" I saw it too, a dark shape lying on the ground where the hole had been. But Paxton didn't stop. He simply shook his head and held up the coat draped over his arm. "That wasn't my coat," he said quietly. We looked back again. There was nothing there. We said no more. We made our way quickly back to the road and returned to the hotel. It was still well before midnight when we got in.
We tried to appear normal, remarking casually to the Boots what a fine night it was for a walk. He had been watching for us and glanced up and down the seafront before locking the door. "You didn't see many people about, I suppose, sir?" I said. "No one at all." At that, Paxton gave me a strange look. "I thought I saw someone turn up the station road after you gentlemen. Still, you were 3 together. I don't suppose there was any trouble meant." I didn't know how to reply. Long simply said, "Good night," and we went upstairs, promising to put the lights out shortly. Back in our sitting room, we did our best to reassure Paxton. "The crown is back where it belongs," we said. "Perhaps it would have been better not to take it, but no real harm has been done now, and we'll never speak of it to anyone who might go looking for it." "And don't you feel better yourself?" I added. "I'll admit, on the way there I half believed your fears, but coming back it didn't feel the same at all, did it?" But it made no difference. "You have nothing to worry about," he said, "but I haven't been forgiven. I'll have to pay for what I did. I know what you're thinking. The church might help, but it's my body that will suffer." He paused. "It's true, I don't feel him waiting outside just now, but—" He stopped. Then he thanked us again, and we did what we could to send him off to rest. We urged him to spend the next day with us, perhaps golf, or at least a walk. He agreed to everything quietly, but it was clear he believed nothing could prevent what was coming.
We didn't quite know what more we could do for him that night. Naturally, you might wonder why we didn't insist on taking him away at once, seeing him safely to friends or family. The truth was, he had none. He had once had a flat in London, but he had recently given it up. He had made plans to go abroad, to Sweden, I believe, and had already shipped his belongings. He was simply passing a few weeks before leaving. There was nowhere obvious we could take him, and no one to whom we could entrust him. So we agreed, in the end, that the best thing was to sleep on it, or try to. As it happened, neither Long nor I slept particularly well. The next morning, however, everything seemed very different. It was one of those clear, beautiful April mornings that make the world feel entirely ordinary again. Even Paxton looked much improved when we met at breakfast. "I've had the nearest thing to a decent night I can remember," he said. We agreed on a plan. Long and I would go out to the golf links for the morning, while Paxton would stay behind and rest. Then we would meet later and spend the afternoon together. He seemed content with that. We went out, played around with some acquaintances, and had an early lunch so that we could return in good time. But whatever hope we had entertained that the worst was over was soon proved wrong. We went straight up to our sitting room. Paxton was there, sitting quietly and reading. "Ready to come out in a little while?" said Long. "Half an hour or so?" "Certainly," he said. We went to our rooms to change. I had a bath and then lay down on the bed for a few minutes and must have dozed off. When I came out, Long was doing the same, and we met at the same time and went together to the sitting room. Paxton was gone. His book lay where he had left it. We checked his room. He wasn't there, nor was he in any of the downstairs rooms. We called for him. A servant came and said, "Why, I thought you gentlemen had already gone out, and so did the other gentleman. He heard you calling from the path outside and ran off in a hurry. I looked out from the coffee room window, but I didn't see you. However, he ran down the beach that way." She pointed in the opposite direction from where we had gone the night before. Without a word, we ran. Something in our manner must have alarmed her, because she followed us to the door and pointed again. "Yes, that's the way he went."
We ran as far as the top of the shingle bank and stopped for a moment, trying to decide which way to go. There were several possibilities: along the path past the houses, along the sand below, or across the shingle itself. We chose the sand, since it was the most deserted. If anything had happened, it was less likely to be seen there. Long said he thought he could see Paxton ahead, running and waving his stick as if signaling to someone. I couldn't be certain. A sea mist was rolling in quickly from the south. There was someone ahead, that was all I could say. And there were tracks in the sand. At first, only those of a man running in shoes. But beneath them, intersecting them, were others. Barefoot tracks. Thin. Bony. There was no doubt about it. The idea that Paxton had been chasing, believing he was following us or some friend, when in fact he was pursuing whatever had made those tracks, was horrifying. We pushed on, the mist growing thicker around us. It was strange, the sun was still shining above, and yet we could see almost nothing ahead. We had passed the houses now and reached the open stretch near the Martello Tower. Beyond that lay nothing but shingle, with the sea on one side and the river on the other. No houses, no people. Just before that point, near the old battery, partly ruined though more intact then than now, we stopped briefly to catch our breath and try to see through the mist. We had run at least a mile. There was nothing visible. We were just about to press on when we heard it. A sound. A laugh. But not like any laugh I'd ever heard. It was breathless, lifeless, as if made without lungs. It came from below us and drifted away into the mist. That was enough. We rushed forward and looked down. Paxton was lying at the bottom. There was no need to tell us he was dead. The marks in the sand showed what had happened. He had run along the edge of the battery, turned sharply around the corner, and there, without doubt, run straight into the arms of something waiting for him. His mouth was filled with sand and small stones. His teeth and jaw were shattered. I only glanced at his face once. At that moment, we heard a shout and saw a man running down from the direction of the Martello Tower. He was the caretaker stationed there. His sharp eyes had managed to see through the mist that something was wrong. He had seen Paxton fall and had seen us arrive shortly afterward. That, at least, spared us suspicion. We asked him if he had seen anyone else, any attacker. He could not say for certain. We sent him for help and stayed with the body until others arrived with a stretcher. Afterward, we traced the path Paxton had taken along the narrow strip of sand beneath the battery wall. Beyond that, the ground turned to shingle, and any further tracks were impossible to follow. What were we to say at the inquest? We felt it would be wrong to reveal the whole story of the crown, at least not in a way that would send others searching for it. In the end, we agreed to say only that we had met Paxton the day before, and that he had expressed fear of a man named William Ager. We also mentioned that we had seen other tracks besides his on the sand. But of course, by then, the tide had washed everything away. No one in the area knew of any living person named William Ager. The evidence of the caretaker cleared us of any suspicion. The verdict was returned: murder by some persons or persons unknown. Paxton had no family, no close connections. All attempts to trace anyone related to him came to nothing. And as for me, I have never returned to Seaburg.
Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced anything like this? Something you couldn't explain? Something that still gives you chills? If you have, tell me in the comments. And don't forget to mention where you're from, because sometimes these things are tied to places. And who knows, maybe your story might be the next one I tell. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more real horror stories like this. Because trust me, this is just the beginning.